is the 77 WABC minicast.
Just called Alan Dershowitz the best defense attorney ever. Frank Morano says Dershowitz is not only the best defense attorney, he's the best appellate lawyer of all time. Even his detractors acknowledge that. No one even knows who is second. So I know you're just hopping on here, Mr. Dershowitz, my dear friend Alan, but a lot of folks have been heaping huge compliments, deserved praise on you. So good Thursday morning, pal. How are you?
I'm doing good, but I want to start heaping insults on Joe Kent, that SOB, who should never have been in the Trump administration and who thankfully is now gone and is in the waste heap of history, this neo-Nazi lying bigot who blames everything in the world on the Jews. So, let's call what he is. Just a terrible, terrible human being. I'm so glad he's gone.
And I'm going to be honest with you, Alan. I do this for a living, and, I'm not as smart as you. I'm a pretty smart guy. I keep in touch with the president. I have a lot of very, very important friends. And I knew almost nothing about Joe Kent. I didn't care when he stepped away. And now that I know the details, which you just mentioned, I'm also happy he left. But the mainstream media, all those liberal networks, all they talked about for a day and a half was how Trump is losing control when a great guy like Joe Kent decides to pick up his ball and go home. You know what, Alan? That's when I knew the guy must have been a loser, because if the leftist media likes you, odds are you're no good.
The leftist media hated him in the beginning when he got appointed. They only loved him when he stood in opposition to President Trump. And, he is such a liar. He says in his letter that Israel pushed us into the Iraq war. Now, I have personal information about that, because I was a friend of Ariel Sharon, the Prime Minister of Israel, and he personally told me he was opposed to Israel getting into the Iraq war, and that he told the President of the United States he was opposed to Israel getting into the Iraq war. In fact, he used the following term. He said, Mr. President, you're going after the wrong eye. You shouldn't go after Iraq, you should go after Iran. And you're taking attention away from a nuclear power, Iran, when you're going after a really second-rate dictator like Saddam Hussein in Iraq. So Joe Kent is not only a bigot, he is an absolute liar.
Yeah.
And then this business, that it has to be imminent. If England and France had gone after Germany in 1935, before it was imminent that they would conduct the Holocaust, 50 million lives would have been saved. And that's why I think President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu will go down in history as having avoided the mistake of allowing Nazism to come to power. You don't wait until a nuclear Iran poses an imminent threat. You take it out before that. That's what's called preventive or preemptive war. And this was one of the best wars the United States has ever fought, most successfully. Tragically, there's been some tragic deaths, and that, unfortunately, that's the cost of war. But in the end, historians will rule that this was one of the best preventive wars ever conducted by any democracy against a tyranny, and it will have saved, we don't know, countless lives. And also, we now have information that Joe Kent is being investigated by the FBI.
Good.
And maybe he wrote this letter because he was about to get fired for committing the crime of leaking classified information. So let me tell you, if Joe Kent is prosecuted, I will join the prosecution team and do whatever I can to see this guy's rear end in prison where he belongs. I mean, he is leading a campaign to try to turn the Republican Party into what the Democratic Party has become, but it's failing. The most recent polls this morning revealed in the Wall Street Journal show that the vast majority of Americans still support President Trump, still support this war, still oppose Iran, still want to see Iran without nuclear weapons or without rockets. And so I think what we're seeing is just a handful of extremists, neo-Nazis who support Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson supports them. And you've been one of the heroes because you're a Republican, you're a Trump guy, and you go after these guys. I wish more Democrats would be like you and go after the left part of the Democratic Party that is turning the party into an anti-Israel, anti-Semitic party. But we have to stop that from happening in the Republican Party. And you're doing a great job, along with Levin and some others, in calling it what it is.
Thank you. Yeah, Mark's great too, and so are you. You're tremendous. And look, I was a Brooklyn Democrat. I loved Ed Koch.
Yeah,
and,
me too.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I did turn on this Democrat Party, besides a whole bunch of other issues that we won't get into, was the anti-Israel, the Squad, these other folks, even before them. But yeah, I'm very upset with what I'm seeing on the right. You mentioned Tucker Carlson. He's not the only one. You have Candace Owens. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Even the vice president, J.D. Vance, I'm not a big fan. I'd much rather see Marco Rubio in that spot. It's not even close. There are a bunch of people, this Kent guy on the right side, that are starting to say things like you said. They blamed Israel for the Iraq war. A lot of these folks blame Israel for this war. They call Bibi Netanyahu the president of the United States. You know, there is one part of this war, though, that does at the very least compel a question to be answered. That is Qatar. So here we are yesterday. Israel goes and bombs that huge energy oil site in Iran. Okay? And Trump says, we knew nothing about that. We didn't want them to do that, blah, blah, blah. And then Iran comes back and says, I tell you what, we're going to bomb Qatar. And Trump got furious. So there's nobody more pro-Trump than me. You mentioned that. I love the guy. I adore the guy. As far as I'm concerned, he's the best president ever. But a lot of Jewish people, a lot of Americans are questioning this unwavering support that President Trump has for Qatar, even during this Iran war. Can you explain that to me?
Well, I think it's a personal thing. I had dinner with President Trump and the Emir of Qatar in the last year of his first term, and you could see they liked each other. First of all, the Emir of Qatar is a very charming guy, tennis player, tall, good-looking, nice guy. I had dinner with him in President Trump's hotel, and then I met him in Qatar, and my wife met him. We all liked him. So, you can understand that personal relationship, and President Trump makes decisions often based on personal relationships, obviously, with China, with other places. So I understand it, but obviously Qatar is playing has been playing a very, very negative role for a long time, and I wish we would have a more arm's length relationship with Qatar. Qatar could also do some good in the end, and so I have an open mind on Qatar, but we have to put American interests first. But this idea that Benjamin Netanyahu pushed President Trump into war is such nonsense. I know them both. You know them both. I've known both of them for a long time. There's no way that Trump allows himself to be pushed into anything. He's going to do what's best for America. He's going to do what's best for what he believes are the values of America. And, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu is going to push for an attack on Iran. That's in Israel's best interest. That's his job. He's the prime minister of Israel. His job is to push for what's best for Israel, and President Trump's job is to make sure he does only what's best for America. And they're both doing their jobs properly, and the balance has been the two strongest air forces in the world have conducted a military operation unparalleled in military history in its success, and we ought to be praising that to the sky.
And I am, although it has been costly for Israel. You know, I get a kick, Alan. I like this guy, Trey Yingst. I don't know if he's even pro-Israel or not, but this poor bastard, he's out there with a helmet on every day, and you could actually, right?
I like him too.
Yeah, you could hear the sirens in the background and missiles dropping, and we lost 2 Israelis 2 days ago, an elderly couple, 3 more people died. They were Palestinians, ironically, in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria. But we are losing people pretty regularly from these missiles, so it has been kind of bittersweet. But talking to Israelis every day, I had our mutual friend Alex Trayman on from JNS.org in Jerusalem yesterday. He's got me set to speak with BB and Mike Huckabee and Levin, a host of others next month. I may have to postpone it because of the war, but he said, look, we run to these shelters. He's got 5 kids. We run to the shelters 2 or 3 times a day. My kids have not been at school in the last 20 days since the war started. So to say it's been rough is an understatement, but they're used to it, these people. And he said, you know what, Sid? We are happy doing this now because we really believe what President Trump and Bibi are doing is the only way there will ever be real peace in the Middle East.
There's no question about that. And if Iran were to be able to develop nuclear weapons, does anybody have any doubt that they would use them? Of course they would use them. That's part of their philosophy. Look what they're doing. They're bombing their friends. They're bombing the UAW. They're bombing Qatar. They're bombing. Of course they would use whatever weapons they had available to them. That's why it's absolutely essential that they be prevented from developing nuclear weapons. And this idea it has to be imminent is absurd. That's what happened in the Second World War. We waited until the Nazi invasion of Poland was imminent. They should have gone in 5 years earlier and destroyed the Nazi war machine. 50 million lives would have been saved. I wrote a whole book about it. It's called The Preventive State, in which I urged years ago a preventive war against Iran. And thankfully now that preventive war is occurring, and the world's going to be a lot safer for it with minimal life loss compared to what would have happened had Iran been able to develop not only nuclear weapons, but rockets capable of delivering them to all parts of the world.